In 1898, the United States declared war on Spain, starting the Spanish-American War. But why did it even start? Hey historians, welcome back to the Why in History. I'm your host, Alexander. To understand the circumstances that caused the Spanish-American War, we need to go back a bit. At the beginning of the 18th century, Spain had one of the largest empires in the world. However, in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars, most of their Latin American colonies declared independence. By 1865, the Spanish Empire consisted of just Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Western Sahara, and a few minor islands in the Pacific. The US, on the other hand, had just gotten out of a bloody civil war and was pretty much at the height of its power. During this period, the US had begun seeing itself as the protector of the Western Hemisphere, going as far as telling Europe that it could not colonize the Americas any further in the 1823 Monroe Doctrine. In 1868, Cuba wanted independence from Spain, and an insurgency began. This war, known as the 10 Years' War, ended in Spain retaining control over the island, but the peace settlement left much to be desired. After another war shortly after, fittingly named the Little War due to its short length, Cuba was finally given representatives in the Spanish Parliament and slaves were finally emancipated, but it still wasn't enough. The wars led to a period of economic downturn in Cuba, and as a result, American companies started investing in the island. In less than 15 years, the United States had very quickly become Cuba's largest trading partner. Now, this video would not be complete without the mention of manifest destiny, a commonly held belief at the time that made Americans think that it was their destiny to rule the continent. Not only that, but Americans also felt that it was their job to spread their values to other parts of the world. While this belief was first used to justify the Western expansion, by the mid-1800s, Americans could not go west anymore. However, instead of calling it a day, Americans started eyeing up other parts of the continent. First came the purchase of Alaska, and then the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom in 1893. Of course, it was only natural that the US started thinking about Cuba next. So when Cuba once again started revolting against Spain in 1895, many Americans felt that the time was right for an intervention. American businesses, who had invested in the island as previously mentioned, also wanted an intervention, and the newspaper industry, sensing a great new way to sell papers, had a field day. They inflated reports of Spanish atrocities, which only served to further radicalize the American population. Even though it was popular, the United States couldn't exactly go to war because it wanted to. After all, the president at the time, William McKinley, was not that big a fan of imperialism. So for 3 years, the US sat on the sidelines and watched. During this time, the US offered to buy Cuba from Spain for $300 million, though that was rejected. However, in 1898, when pro-Spain loyalists began rioting in the Cuban capital, Havana, the USS Maine was dispatched to the city in order to protect the US citizens living there. A few weeks later, the Maine mysteriously exploded and sank, killing 260 people. To this day, we still don't know what caused it, but the newspapers were quick to blame Spain. The incident gave President McKinley no choice but to ask Congress for permission to send troops to Cuba. Just like that, the final opposition to intervention had dissipated, and on April 25, 1898, Congress declared war on Spain, starting the Spanish-American War. The war was relatively short, coming in at a little less than 4 months, but in the end, there was a clear winner, the United States, who emerged from the war a global power. In the Treaty of Paris of 1898, the United States was given Guam, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico. For these territories, the US paid Spain $20 million. Additionally, the administration of Cuba was transferred to the United States, who granted Cuba its independence in 1902. While the war was positive for the US in the grand scheme of things, the same cannot be said about Spain. Simply put, the war marked the end of the Spanish Empire. While Spain was left with a few minor islands in the Pacific, these were sold to Germany the following year. Ironically, all those islands would eventually become American possessions in the aftermath of the Second World War. While the Philippines would go on to become independent in 1946, Guam and Puerto Rico are still US possessions to this day. If you liked my video, please remember to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.